Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. It's time now for us to touch base with the politics desk in today's Politics Wrap. SABC News reporter Natasha Piri joining us in studio. Natasha, very good evening to you. With government back in business, some priorities need to be made to ensure that citizens at the end of the day benefit from efficient service delivery. What do you have for us?
Thank you so much. Paul, of course, we've got a jam-packed show. We'll be joined shortly by the Minister of Land Reform and, of course, a local government expert, Dr. Tim Maake. But just moving on to this story for now. Partners in the Government of National Unity, such as the UDM, PAC and the Good Party, believe the upcoming Cabinet Lekgotla should prioritize social security for the poor. The much-anticipated Lekgotla, comprising of 11 political parties, is expected to take place soon. It will be the first time in 30 years that this number of parties will partake in drafting the country's policies for the next 5 years.
UDM Secretary-General Yongama Zigebe says the Cabinet Lekgotla should discuss the protection of society's most vulnerable, especially the poor. Zigebe says initiatives aimed at reducing poverty and inequality should be a top priority.
Expanding access to healthcare services, particularly in rural and undeserved areas, strengthening social safety nets to protect the most vulnerable members of society. Initiatives aimed at reducing poverty and inequality, ensuring that all citizens have the opportunity to thrive.
The Good Party has also echoed the UDM sentiments. Its Secretary-General, Brett Heron, says the government should take care of the poor.
In this government program of action, we need to see the top priorities being inequality, poverty, and continuing social, economic, spatial, and environmental injustice being addressed. And in doing so, what we will achieve is to bring the picture that the Constitution paints of a country of hope for all into life.
PAC Secretary-General Apapoe says there should be decisive action to redistribute land.
PAC expect a comprehensive, accelerated approach to land restitution and rural development from the upcoming cabinet meeting. There should be decisive action to redistribute the land and improve the quality of life in rural areas. Within the cabinet collective, we'll advance for a revolutionary liberation struggle objective.
The Cabinet Lekgotla is expected to take place on Thursday and Friday. Zara Groenewald, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the Northern Cape's Land Reform, Agriculture, Nature Conservation and Environmental Affairs MEC Mase Manopule says the department will no longer be pumping millions into failing farming projects that have not taken off despite assistance from government. Manopule, who returns to the portfolio for the second term, says her office is inundated with calls for assistance from many under-resourced farmers who need funds from the state. The MEC says they are now opening doors to newcomers in the sector.
With over 14,000 farmers knocking on the department's door for assistance, the MEC of Agriculture and Land Reform says approximately 715 million rand has been set aside by the department to help those who seriously want to farm. MEC Mase Manopole says it will no longer be feasible for the department to pump in funds into failing projects.
We cannot continue to fund one entity for about 10 to 15 years. I've just presented to you that we're about 14,000, and if I round it up, is 15,000 farmers who have registered in the department farmers register. So if we fund one institution or one entity for about 10 to 15 years, we are doing unfair to other farmers, and also we will not be able to transform the sector because we want them to move from being small scale to be commercial farmers.
The Warrington Super Chicken, which had been operating through the assistance of the department for at least 2 decades, is now a white elephant after funding was stopped. The department pumped in more than 40 million rand into the business, but it has failed to be profitable.
Our part, because it's responsibility to ensure that we support them, they can become sustainable in the market, will continue. We are committed to ensure that we ensure they are back in business We also want to get, if we can not get any investor that will be able to help them to be. So there is a couple of scenarios that the team in the department has put together that wants to present today.
The department says it remains committed to transforming the sector and says farmers should do their part and also explore external investment opportunities. Karabo Siyoko, SABC News, Kimberley.
We're now joined via hybrid by the newly appointed Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, Mr. Mzwanele Nyhontso. Mr. Nyhontso, thank you so much for joining us on the Politics Wrap. First and foremost, congratulations on your appointment as the Minister of Land Reform. What are your immediate priorities in your department?
Greetings to you, Natasha, and the viewers, and thanks for having me here. Yes, priorities are very clear. Land redistribution, land claims, thousands of backlogs that are here in this department that people are talking about, and of course, land restitutions. As you know, that many problems of African people emanate from landlessness. So we will definitely prioritize those issues. And also remember, it's not only land reform, Natasha, it's also rural development. An area that has not been attended to for so many years. People are living in rural areas, they don't know what to do, they are suffering, they can't even utilize their own land. We want to make sure that they are assisted and they must work their land. They must produce fresh food from their land. They must sell food from their land. We must see if we can even revive those abandoned factories in rural areas like your Transkei, your Ciskei, Old Ciskei, and other areas in Limpopo and so on. Because we want to make sure that we are also contributing in stopping urbanization of our people from rural areas to big cities like Joburg, Cape Town, to look for greener pastures because they can't find jobs where they live. So we will definitely prioritize those elements, and then we'll take it from there.
And before we actually get to those elements, I'm just quite interested to know, I mean, you've seen your counterparts, various ministers, having their handover engagements with their predecessors. Is this something that you've actually had with the former minister, Togo Didiza? And I'm interested in knowing what programs you'd actually want to continue with where she actually left off.
It's not yet happened. It's going to happen maybe tomorrow or Tuesday or Wednesday morning. Remember, there's a special cabinet meeting tomorrow, so I'm going there. But he has already called me to say he's ready to hand over the file to me, the speaker herself, Mama Didiza. So that is also that can happen maybe tomorrow after the meeting of the cabinet, because the cabinet meeting will be in Cape Town. So I'm looking forward to meet with her. Hopefully I'll get that file tomorrow morning. But she told me that file is ready, but until I get the file and look to it, that's why I'm not committing too much, because I must see what the minister was doing and then see where I continue from her. But already she told me that file is ready, so I'm going to get it tomorrow.
Okay. Mr. Nyhontso, I mean, we all know that you're a strong advocate for land restitution, as you've alluded to, more specifically because of your background. You're the PAC president, and these are one of the main tenets, of the party. How speedily would you actually, speed up the issue of land restitution, specifically working in this ministry?
I'm going to try by all means to make it quick, Natasha, and of course we'll also see the question of budget and so on, and working also through the cabinet and check and get some mandates, and also of course we'll need the support from the president himself. But Natasha, as you know, there was land audit report here in South Africa, and as you know, black people are only occupying 4% according to that land audit. Then white people 75, colored people 15, Indians around 8 or 9, I'm not sure now. But what I'm going to do, first thing in the office on Wednesday, my first day in office in Pretoria will be on Wednesday. I will be able to get all the recommendations from land audit report, the land commission, and everything else, and from there we will just start working. In fact, I said we must have 100 days like anybody who's starting a new office, and then see what can we do in these 100 days, and we'll come back and report to the nation through you, Natasha, of course, that this is what we've done so far, this is what we're hoping to achieve, this is what we have achieved, this is what we have not achieved, but we'll achieve this time, but we are going to put 100 days as a target to our department.
Okay, and of course we look back, we look forward to that feedback after your 100 days in office. But just also speaking about other challenges, for those who don't know, there's a challenge of speculators in addressing the issue of land restitution. So for example, a speculator, let's just, for example, use myself. I'm a land speculator. I go to a farmer, I buy the land for, let's just say 1 million. And you as government want to acquire that land. I then sell you the land for 10 million rand. How will you address this issue of these speculators?
No, we will take it. We'll discuss it at the department, Natasha, and we'll also be looking at the policy, that the policies that are there with the department. But I agree with you, there will be those challenges. But let me meet with the department on Wednesday, at the official handover, look at the policies around land, and then come back to you and say, this is how we're going to address all these things. But these things must be addressed, Natasha. We don't have a choice. It's not about us, it's not about PAC, it's not about the fact that land has always been at the center of PAC policy. This is the problem of African people. African people do not have land, and they must have access to land. In fact, even the name of the department is making life easy for all of us. Land reform and rural development. So the land must be reformed. So the reforms must come. We know reforms may not be nice, or someone may not like them, but there will be reforms. Unfortunately, they must happen in our lifetime and in this term.
Okay, Mr. Nyhontso, I just quickly have one more question, if you'll just answer me briefly. Earlier on, you heard your counterparts, the Minister of Energy and Electricity, Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that they're considering using land expropriation with compensation for energy electricity purposes. Will you be engaging with the minister? Has he engaged you on this issue already?
We have not engaged already, but we will definitely engage. Remember, these departments are overlapping to each other. We will definitely be engaging. At some point, already we have agreed with Minister John Steenhuisen that we have to talk, because these departments are related. I will definitely engage the minister, or the minister will engage the Minister Nyhontso, and other ministers who are working. These departments are overlapping to look at the Minister of Human Settlement, for example, Minister Mzwanele Nyhontso is also, his department is definitely overlapping to the land, because houses cannot be built in the sky. They must be built on the land. So we will definitely be talking with these ministers and come up with a clear direction, Natasha. Yes, we will engage.
Okay, Minister, thank you so much for your time. Of course, we will catch up with you after your first 100 days in office. That, of course, was the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, Mr. Mzwanele Nyhontso. Now, moving on to the story, this week, Parliament will elect chairpersons of committees of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The National Assembly will also elect 3 House chairpersons. Parliament is set to have a busy week as both House elect chairpersons of committees. The election of chairpersons will precede the tabling of budget votes by all the departments. On Tuesday, the NCOP will also consider the nomination of members to serve on the Judicial Service Commission, the SABC Parliamentary Forum, as well as the Magistrates Commission. The NCOP will also elect its permanent deputy chairperson on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the budget votes that will be tabled this week include health, employment and labor, international relations and cooperation, human settlements and mineral resources, and energy, amongst others. Now we're joined by political analyst, Dr. Tim Maake, via Zoom. Of course, he's a governance expert, I beg your pardon. Dr. Maake, thank you so much for joining us. I believe you actually also heard our conversation with the minister. And of course, this also comes just, days before this weekend's Cabinet Lekgotla. I know we spoke on Saturday and you mentioned that the key priority areas for this Cabinet Lekgotla should actually focus on energy, issues of crime and corruption, jobs, inequality. Can you just please elaborate that for us?
Thanks. Good evening, Natasha, and good evening to your viewers. I think fact of the matter is that we've had manifestos of different political parties during the election, and most of them centered around issues of stabilizing the energy supply. With an intention to make sure that it will support or boost the economic growth, which will ultimately lead to the creation of jobs. Now, that is the focus that the Cabinet Lekgotla would not escape having to engage robustly on that subject matter, precisely because one of the reasons why we have a government of national unity in place today, it is precisely because most South Africans were very unhappy with the way in which the economy was growing and the way in which unemployment was also continuing to rise. And the fact that we had challenges in the energy supply. So as a matter of fact, it is upon the political leaders to make sure that all the aspirations of the citizens must be realized. And for them to be realized, they may not focus on petty little issues and avoid confronting the issue of making sure that we stabilize the energy supply, which will then be able to assist in making sure that there is a lot of investment that goes into the economy, which will then ultimately result in the creation of jobs. So those three, for me, they are interrelated. You cannot treat them separately, and you cannot ignore engaging on those matters. Yet, yes, there are other aspects which are of critical importance as well, over and above the three that I've just highlighted.
And Dr. Tim, Dr. Maake, actually, these are uncharted times or uncharted waters, right? It's going to be the first time in 30 years that all these political parties will actually partake in drafting the country's policies for the next 5 years. Not only will there be ministers, there'll be deputy ministers, director generals will have the immediate task of formulating, discussing, and adopting policies, like you said, that will move the country forward in the next 5 years. But do you think there's actually sufficient ground to actually accommodate all 11 signatories of the Government of National Unity?
Well, we have seen on how the president has approached the whole issue of appointing his cabinet, that he has tried to widen his net to try and accommodate almost all the signatories to the Government of National Unity. It is for that reason we have such a bloated cabinet, because the president had no other option but to increase cabinet to make sure that he doesn't offend his colleagues within the African National Congress, while at the same time he would want to make sure that he draws closer all the various political parties into the Government of National Unity. But the crux of the matter is that it would have not been possible to accommodate almost everyone beyond the 11 parties that we already have in the Government of National Unity. Yes, there might be other political parties that might want to join at a later stage, but I think the reality would be that they need to appreciate and accept the fact that for them to be in the Government of National Unity should not translate in them acquiring a cabinet position. It should be for them to contribute for the best interest of the citizens. If that is the spirit, I'm sure we're going to have more political parties coming in later to join the Government of National Unity, because they will be placing the interests of society first rather than their personal interest or their political party interest.
Dr. Maake, we know that the Forum of South African, the beg your pardon, the Forum of South African Directors General Foresight, which is actually chaired by the Director General in the presidency, has actually undertaken or has been given the task of analyzing the manifestos, the different manifestos of these political parties in the GNU, and will be submitting a proposal for consideration and adoption at the Cabinet Lekgotla. What then happens if no common ground is actually found and the proposal is not accepted?
I think, Natasha, first and foremost, let me just indicate that I have trust and confidence in the men and women who are holding those positions of Director Generals, precisely because this will not be for the first time they engage with such a process, although this is at a different spectrum in the sense that they will have to now study the different manifestos and try and consolidate them in order to influence government program. Historically, they've been used to only having to engage with the manifesto of the ruling party, which did not have a lot of complexities which they need to grapple with. But at this stage, yes, I think they will be able to produce some information or data that will enable the Cabinet Lekgotla to engage. But what remains is the attitude of the political leaders, is the attitude of the various cabinet ministers, insofar as having to appreciate that they shouldn't approach this whole discussion with an intention to want to win the battle, but they need to approach it with an intention to build a better South Africa for everyone, irrespective of the fact that some of the aspects that are contained in their manifestos may not find expression in the government program of action. They need to understand and appreciate the fact that we're not starting from scratch, but this government it's moving from what the sixth administration has done, so it is taking over from what the sixth administration has done. So all what is just going to be done is just to tweak here, moderate here and there, and improve here and there, and be able to come up with something that will be able to accommodate all the political parties, as opposed to being a one dominant manifesto of one political party. And I'm quite confident that Foresight will be able to do justice to that responsibility. But what remains to be seen is on how a cabinet is going to respond to the presentation that is going to be made by the Director General in the presidency on behalf of Foresight, as a way of just creating debates and discussions for Lekgotla to consider.
Dr. Tim Maake, thank you so much for your time and thanks for your inputs.
The pleasure is mine, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Of course, that was Dr. Tim Maake, a governance expert. They're just giving us some inputs and insights in the upcoming Cabinet Lekgotla that will be taking place on the 13th and 14th this weekend. Of course, Mpho, it will be a busy time, especially for Parliament, tomorrow and, of course, this week in the build-up to the State of the Nation address, which will be taking place next week. But, of course, trust Team SABC News to actually give you all the latest updates and to be on top of the story. As for me, it's a wrap from the Politics Wrap, and I'll hand it over to your capable hands, Mpho.
Natasha, thank you very much. Certainly a busy few days still to come as the government gets into full swing.